Use pens for fast sketching. We look at some slower methods to draw, but there's also some faster methods you can use with pens for a faster drawing. On the website, you'll find this photo of pens, pencils, and brushes. I'll use this for reference as I freehand draw these. Writing instruments are cylinders on their sides, so they're not much different than what we've been doing with cylinders. Now, I'm going to be using the 1080p canvas we created last video, so if you don't have one, take a look there if you need it. So I'm going to start this by making a layer over top of my reference layer here. So we got layer 2 here. And I'm going to be using an Apple Pencil for this. So here we have, under inking, we have a whole bunch of pens that we're going to be looking at today. But I'm going to start with the technical pen. And I'm going to set this for about maybe 3% on my size. And I'm going to do this as a background thing, so I'm going to actually change my opacity here to around 50%. Now this is going to work a lot like the pencil we've been using, but with a much cleaner line. So we'll sketch some of these writing tools we have in the photo. So let's start here with one of the capped pens. So we've got one of them that's sort of like this. And so what I'll do is I'll just make a cylinder. Like so. And I'm just doing a very loose drawing here. And it's got a couple little lines in there. It's more like this on this end. And it's got another end here. Like so. Okay, and I just pretty much put that, and I got a clip. Okay. And I'm just doing this really quick and loose. I'm not being too careful with it. You could, of course, be more careful with it. I can do something like a pencil, or like we can do that as well. So I'm just going to make 2 lines. And then finish off the cylinder like we did before. And first of all, we got the metal part of the eraser, and then we've got the eraser. And down over here, I can just sort of sketch in this. And I've got a little bit of a cylinder. I cut this pencil, if you look at it a little carefully. So it's got a little bit of a sharper edge there. And we've got the difference between the wood. Okay, so just something like that. Very quick sketches here, okay? I'm going to try some of the other pens later with some other shapes, but let's just start with these 2. One thing you can do, and I'm going to go ahead and change my layer here, is use really interesting pen called Baskerville. Okay. And Baskerville does a lot of stuff with smoothing. It has a high stabilization. It smooths the line out. Use this pen for tracing if you want straight or gently curving lines. So I'll give you an example of this with the capped pen here. I'm going to set this to around 20% or so. And I'll have full opacity. I'm going to use black here. And if I just draw like this, I get a pretty straight line. And so I can make very straight lines. I can make curved lines very easily. And a lot of stuff we do with the auto shape, you don't have to bother with. And so very quickly, I've just made a pen. Now, another thing you can do with this is with a high number here, and I'm just going to put a line down here to show you, is Baskerville is pressure sensitive, so you can change the pressure. We can use this along with the weight of the line to make shadow. So I can do this pencil, for example, where I'm going to do this first part here very light on the top, but I can go to a much higher pressure down here. Maybe that's a little too much. Okay, and then I'll just do some more light lines in there. And it gives us the shadow of the base a lot more than we already had. So you already see a bit of a shadow. You don't even have to start doing hatching. Many times you can just do that much and just that suggests enough of the shadow that you don't even have to go into the hatching. Okay. Now, speaking of hatching, I'm going to bring down Baskerville a little bit here. It's got one really neat thing, and that is if you run really quick, it makes a nice straight line, which is great, again, for cross-hatching and hatching. So if you don't want to use the auto-shape trick I used before, and you're only going to be using a pen, then you can use this trick to do things like this. And you quickly get the cross-hatching that you wouldn't get so much with some of the other methods we used. And you do this really, really rapidly in comparison, okay? So you can do that as well. Now, another pen that works really well with this weight idea that I did with the pencil is one called the Studio Pen. So I'm going to go over here to Studio Pen. Do it right here. Okay, I've got this one set for about, let's say, 5-6%. Okay, and you can see this has got a nice cleaner line. If I bring it up to the higher, I can get more of a weight, and it's a little more controllable than on the weight side of things. So let's try to sketch just straight with this. So I'm going to do maybe the Sharpie here, and for that, again, I'm going to make a parallel line. The bottom one will be a lot thicker, and then we've got the cap and the tip, which have a little bit more of a curve to them. And with pens, you can just sort of trace along the whole thing a little bit more and get that. Okay, and then just add in a clip. Like that. And there you have it. And again, that's all you need to do. You can throw a couple extra lines in there if you want, just gently, using a Studio Pen, or you can just go pretty hard on it and just put some thicker lines. So I could, for example, just color this in with a bunch of scribbles and get something that looks like that. And there you go. It's a very quick pen that you just created. Now let's go talk a little bit about color, because we don't really have any color here. You can use color on these. I've been going to black. Let me pick up a yellow, for example. And with the Studio Pen, I can go in here and make my pencil yellow. I can also change my opacity on this. So I make it a little lighter yellow. Let's just throw in some light yellow there. And then with that opacity lower, I'll make a darker color here and throw that darker color just underneath it, and we can start getting a pencil. I'm going to shoot over here to an orange, make it pale, and then we can start putting in some of these pieces of the pencil. Okay. You go a while, and we can give this a blue part here. And you can start seeing, we start building a pencil relatively quickly with just a few lines here, okay? Now, there's another way you can hatch as well, and that's using this weight idea for hatching. So let me just pick up a marker and draw a marker. So I'm going to go back over here to black again. And let me just draw a marker. And I'm going to go all the way back up here. And this marker's got a little bit of a taper here, so let's just do it like this. Okay. And it's got a dark part here. And a little bit of a dark here with some lines in there. Okay. And this is, again, just a very quick sketch. I'm not going too carefully about these, but this is just the way you could start doing some of these sketches. You just loosely throw these in together. You can, of course, go back, put another layer on, do some tracing, do some cleanup, and work from there. But I'm just showing you how to use some of these lines very quickly. Now, another technique you can use is to just change your pressure as you're going through it with the hatch. So what you're going to do is start with a thick pressure and go to a thin pressure. Now, I did some exercises with that a little while ago in one of the earlier videos, but now we're going to try to do that very quickly. So if you just do it very quickly, so you start with a high pressure and then just flick your Apple Pencil off the screen, in a short distance, you get a mark like that, okay? And then we get rid of those. And we can do that on our marker like that. And that gives us a different effect as far as hatching is concerned. I sometimes go downward like this. You can also go up. So you start thin and work your way thick. And when you do that, you stop. Okay, so you start fast and light, go heavy and stop and slow. And you can use that kind of mark as well here. Of course, you can change the weight a bit. So you'll change the weight. And I can start doing things like that. Now in here, it's just black for all I need. So I can just do good old-fashioned scribble on here. Will also work here. I've got a little bit of this kind of mark I can throw in here to get the shading on the top of the cap, if I wanted to do that as well. So that's another way that you can start to work with these. Now let's do one more, and I'm going to use the highlighter for this one. So let's see what we're at now. We're at Studio Pen. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use another one. We're going to use Mercury, which works a lot like the Studio Pen, but it gives a little bit more of a rougher pick to it. So I'm going to, again, use some bold lines. You can use thin lines. I mean, the thin lines look pretty thin and pretty accurate, so those work very nicely. I'm just using these bigger lines so you can see this. And let's just do, and so I'm going to do this, is just going to sketch in my pen. And this one's got an inverted cap from the one we had before, so I'm just going to make a tapered cylinder there. Okay. And so we've got a very quick cylinder, and you get a different effect with your marker. Again, I can use some form of hatching in here if I want. But again, I can also use color. And so let's go into color here. And one brush here that works really well is this thylacine brush. This works really well with scribble. So you can just scribble with this one. And it gives a nice loose scribble on it that you can use to express color with a lot of volume, but not as bright as some of these others. Again, I can drop that. Maybe we'll actually use a complement this time and throw a complement on the bottom where our cross-hatching is. And you can start seeing what you can get with this. Let me go back over here. Maybe I'll throw a mid-tone in there. And I can scribble the other direction. And you can start seeing my marker show up like that. Okay, so that's a few interesting fast sketches using some pens. So for your challenge, try drawing the same writing instruments in the photo, or try some of the ones we didn't do yet here. See how well you can draw them using the different pens and techniques I used here. These pens and the marker we learned in the earlier episode make up examples of most of the types of pen work. We've got one more way you could use a pen, and that's with more artistic filling, such as pen and ink. In the next lesson, we'll learn a few techniques for painting using pens. So be sure to hit subscribe to not miss a single lesson.